Ben Shapiro was right when he said the facts don't care about your feelings. And I try to go a bit against the current or the reputation of liberals as being overly emotional, especially, the stereotype that I fit. Like I'm an overeducated, well-paid white woman.
White liberal, well-educated woman.
Or whatever.
Jessica, thanks so much for coming on.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're calling in live from the Fox News studio. So it's not a prison background, it's your office.
No, my office, which I guess can feel like a prison sometimes, but it's not. It's actually I would flip it around. I have a beautiful view of Midtown Manhattan.
I'm really curious because I've been following you for a long time, many years now. And I remember you originally started, or at least back when I first connected with you, you were working at Bustle, I think, as the head of research, which is definitely a more liberal leaning media company. Did you ever imagine you'd have an office in Fox News?
No, because it took them a while to give me one. Also, on top of it, well, there aren't that many. You got to fight for it. And I share it with Harold Ford Jr. I always say I'm like half a co-host anyway, since Harold does the other half of the week. It's definitely a twisty career path for sure. And I started doing Fox even before I went to Bustle because my old boss, Doug Schoen, who was Bill Clinton's pollster and Bloomberg's pollster, was a contributor here. So he started encouraging me to do more media and to learn how to speak concisely, which I feel like I still haven't mastered. But he was like, this is going to be really good for you to do. And then I moved over to work at Bustle right after the 2016 election and then got hired as a contributor at Fox around the same time. So I've always had that duality, I guess, of a couple things. And it's only the last year that I've gone like all in on media, which is a strange place to be. Don't you feel that?
Well,
like it's a bizarre profession.
It is a very strange profession, but I started originally in media and then have branched out to social media and podcasting and more like influencer stuff. So
we not? I put everything like under the umbrella. Like the you are the brand is like what I think of as media. And that part of it is strange because what if people don't like your brand, which just means they don't like you?
Well, it helps when you're good looking. So I think we're both good on that front.
Okay. I mean, I have had Fox hair and makeup, but yes.
Tell us more about what it's like being in Fox News and being somebody who's a center-left Democrat, who is often critical of Trump, who's often defending the Democrats and being very much a minority perspective in the company, or at least on a lot of the shows that you're on. What is it like?
It really depends on the day, which I think is actually an exciting way to have a career or to have a job, because I hear that all the time from my friends and even my husband. Like, he works in finance and he's just like, it's the same thing, right? Like shift F9 or whatever the joke is about, your daily grind. And no 2 days are the same, certainly working here. And I've, over the years, I got hired in 2017, so I'm a little bit off from a decade working here as a contributor and then as a host. But I know my coworkers the same way that you would in a normal office. And so like it can be very tense, but there's also like a softness to it because you know each other's lives, and we definitely rely on that, like in breaks and things like that. If it's gotten really tense, something like baby pictures or like dog pictures or something. And I feel like, I mean, not that I've gone too far necessarily, but I always like to keep my side of the street super clean, right? And I don't want anyone to feel like it was overly personal from my side of things. So I just kind of take it one day at a time. I pick my battles, or I try to pick them really strategically. I know when certain things, like to a liberal activist or a lot of people who are following along on social media, they'll get really critical. Like, why didn't you do X, Y, or Z thing? Or why aren't you bringing up these things? And I'm like, you got to treat people the same you would as like real life folks in your life. And I've got to see them tomorrow. Like, you may want to go on whatever show and have some massive fight or think like a Jubilee situation where you're surrounded is a really good time. But I'm much more of a fan of having this long-term relationship with people that think things differently than me, and getting to know them, getting to know their positions, and then finding a way also to make them see, not necessarily that I'm right. I don't think I'm converting certainly the people that I'm working with. But at least for the folks at home, I know that they particularly love about the five that we seem like this dysfunctional family that they recognize from their own lives.
That's a good way of putting it, a dysfunctional family, because The Five, to me, is one of the most interesting shows on cable news. And I say that as somebody who's not a fan of cable news, but there's like three shows that I still like because they actually have an exchange of ideas and they have different perspectives in person in the same room. So I watch CNN Newsnight, I watch The Five.
Yeah.
That's kind of it at this point. Everyone else, it's maybe
Oh,
clips here and there, because I just don't like the yes and style of television, right? Where
okay.
the host has a perspective, brings on a guest, says their opinion, and then tosses it to the guest to say, "You're so right," and also this. I kind of think that's what is behind a lot of the decreased interest in certain media brands, where there's just no vibrancy, there's just no debate, there's just no conversation. Because at least in my own content, the most viral moments or the most popular clips that I have pop up, it's always an exchange. It's
A
always a
debate. Yeah.
debate. And people love that, but it's not easy to do. I mean, what's like maybe the most awkward or uncomfortable moment that's happened for you in one of those debate situations?
Um, I'll go with like not awkward, but most intense was definitely the day that the Dobbs decision came down. And that was, a huge
Overturning
win
Roe v. Wade.
yes, overturning Roe v. Wade, a huge victory for the conservative pro-life movement, 50 years in the making. And I was prepared for it, but also felt like, this ton of bricks had fallen down on me. And I've always tried to make sure that my advocacy speaks to the experience of a person who doesn't have it as good as I do. Like, I'm very well aware of all of my, to use liberal terms, like my privileges. And I remember I did my grad school. I went abroad to do my PhD, and my grandmother, who started out in Europe but came to the United States when Hitler came to power, like so many other Jews, said to me, like, just always remember, if you need an abortion, like you can do that there, and I'll come over. And I was like, Nanny, I don't know what you think I'm going to be doing here. But she just was trying to make a point about like how I would always be supportive and I would always have access to the things that I need in life. And a lot of that comes with means and a liberal minded nanny on top of it. And so when I talk about issues like that, like I did on the day that Roe was overturned, I'm thinking about, a young woman who doesn't have a nanny that's going to help her get across a state line necessarily, or who doesn't have the money to be able to do those, to have that kind of procedure. And so that felt like the heaviest day of days. And it was
Because
really
everyone, a
special.
lot of the people around you are happy.
Oh, like gleeful.
Yeah.
Like really think that it's such a good thing. And on top of it, I don't want to make it seem like they feel that way necessarily just because in all circumstances they think it's unacceptable. They're just happy that it became a states' rights issue. That was the argument for them. They're like, this is how it was supposed to be. It's not enshrined in the Constitution, blah, 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 blah. And as you know, if you've seen clips of me or watched The Five, I'm interrupted on occasion. And it was one of those times where I just got to speak for like 2.5 minutes straight. And it felt like this moment of real recognition from my colleagues that they knew that this was something like deeply, deeply important to me, and that I was having a personal and political reaction to something. And so I wouldn't necessarily call that awkward, but important and really meaningful, and also made me feel so sure of the fact that I was in the right place.
Mm-hmm. No,
That I was,
that
yeah.
makes sense. And it's interesting too, because I'm always surprised when I read about the diversity of Fox News viewership, because
Mhm.
people think, oh, only Republicans watch Fox News. That's not true. Across a lot of the country, Democrats, independents, lots of people watch Fox News. And I'm sure if you polled them, they're not all hardcore pro lifers. And many of them would actually agree with the perspective you articulated, and to have that represented, I think, is important. I do wonder, though, how you deal with the aspect of live television almost every day, right? Because I do YouTube, I do social media, I get to edit, I get to, if I have a blemish, it can like Photoshop, put a little filter on it, what have you. But more importantly, I can, like fact check stuff. I can cut stuff out if I don't like what I
Right.
said. How do you handle having to, when I do live TV, I get a little nervous, but I always prep, but I'm doing like one segment or one show one night. You're doing it all the time. How do you make sure that you're not saying something that's going to get you fact checked or dunked on X, or
Well,
and is there a
I
time where
mean,
you've made a mistake live and you feel bad about it?
I get dunked on certainly on X, which is now like Elon Musk's playground, right? So
Well, but
the
there's a difference
the
between them
algorithm.
them dunking on you and them dunking on you when you actually got something wrong. You know what I
Yes, I
mean?
have not been community noted. Let's
Yeah.
just say that it's more of an alternative facts kind of approach to, well, this is wrong. But for a lot of people, that's enough, right? Like who live in a conservative ecosystem and think that I am a spinner in chief, right? Or that I am up there every day just spewing DNC sanctioned lies. And that happens constantly. And I've had to just kind of come to grips with the fact that that's how that subsection of our political discourse thinks of me. And that was a really tough adjustment for someone who's also so I think well researched and like rooted in data. I have a PhD. I was the head of research at a big digital media company, as you pointed out. Like I'm not around with my prep, right? And so that has been tough for me because I don't think that we're entitled to our own facts. I think Ben Shapiro was right when he said the facts don't care about your feelings. And I try to also go a bit against the current or the reputation of liberals as being overly emotional, especially, the stereotype that I fit. Like I'm an overeducated, well-paid white woman.
White liberal, well-educated woman.
Awfuls or whatever. Yeah, like I wasn't an Elizabeth Warren person, but you wouldn't have been shocked if I if I told you that I was. So that's something that I kind of just have to deal with and have, I think, plowed through pretty effectively. And I'm actually writing a book right now, and a lot of that is about that experience and how you can also build a database worldview and defend it no matter where you are. Because I hear from a lot of people who are certainly not trying to get on TV, but are trying to have discussions about these very thorny issues like abortion, like the war in Gaza, um, healthcare, whatever it is, with people that they care about. Trump, whether it's liberals in a conservative family or a conservative in a liberal family. I hear from people that say, I want to survive Thanksgiving. And I love the fact that they think of me as someone who would have a good idea as to how to do that. But we'll see how the book sells. So that's one aspect of it. In terms of a mistake, it's a social media one, and it's a recent example. I was very hot on, pointing out, and continue to be, though I haven't job since, so that's good. But that ICE has been detaining American citizens or people who are here unlawfully, technically, but are like good members of their community. And there was a video circulating of someone that was picked up, and it turned out that he had actually like raped a girl. And really, he was undocumented, definitely should not have been here any longer. And Stephen Miller
Oh, I
found
saw that.
it. Yeah. And started posting about it, and then other huge accounts like Cat Turd Loves Me and all and all the finest specimens on the right. And I sat there thinking, like, how did you let this happen? And this is something that I talked to Greg Gutfeld, who I'm on the show with, and who's also a very good friend of mine, about a lot. Like how much time you should take to make sure that you know the totality of the story, which is very difficult when you are doing live TV. This was something that was tweeted anyway, but we're going live at 5 o'clock, whether we know exactly what the criminal history is of this person who was just picked up or not. And so I decided to just take it. Like, I didn't take the tweet down right away. I responded to Stephen Miller saying this was a mistake and I regret it. And now I'm going to delete this to make sure more people don't see it, I think. And then I got dunked on for doing that too. And I was like, guys, what do you want me to do? I could
Yeah.
either run away from this and say nothing, or I could own it. I chose to own it, and to somebody who I find totally abhorrent. And that didn't feel great, but it felt like the
What more
responsible
can you
thing to do.
do? Right? And
I don't
as
know.
if these people
Honestly,
always
just vote for Donald Trump. Like, that's often the answer, where they're like, when are you going to start put on your MAGA hat?
as
So
if these people always have their facts 100% straight too. Stephen
well,
Miller and that crowd. I'm
yeah.
going to hit the doubt button on that one. But no, that's all you can do, especially I don't know if you feel this way. You probably feel it even more than I do because you're doing daily or near daily, like TV and all these stories. And I just pick a few things for a podcast every day, but I feel like overwhelmed and barraged with news
Yeah.
stories. Stuff is happening. Sometimes I miss Biden being president because it just felt more calm. I'm not even saying which one I like better, who I would rather have. To me, they're different kinds of problematic and flawed, but it was just less hectic. They're doing so
Yeah.
much, and I feel like I'm drowning trying to keep up. I imagine you
Well,
feel
that's the
similar.
point. That's their intention.
Yeah.
Is, if it's coming so fast and so furious, then you can't really spend the time that you should dwelling on X thing that is a gross overreach. And it's all a big game of distraction. And I find I even get criticized when I make that argument, but I believe that in my soul, that there is this fire hose of action and also misinformation coming out of this administration to make it impossible for people that are trying to do a good job covering this stuff, and also put out meaningful content where you can spend time with a story, right? If you're going to
Mhm.
go and tape a podcast, you don't want to give your listeners just a top line look. You want to make sure that you've been able to get under the hood, right? And look at the factors that have led to this decision, or like, what's that left field thing that you can bring in that'd be really interesting to hear. And sometimes you're like, there's just not enough hours in the day to figure this out.
I completely agree. One thing I'm curious though is I was at a conservative political conference not too long ago, and they asked me a question. They said, "Who do you admire in mainstream media?" And I really, to be honest, I struggled to answer because there's not many. I was like, oh, kind of slim pickings. And then what I eventually said was Scott Jennings and Jessica Tarlov, because
Oh,
I think that it takes guts to like go into the lion's den and to be 4v1 or 3v1 and to be standing up for your beliefs in an environment where it's extremely unpopular and contributing to civil political discourse. And the conservative audience booed when I said your name. And so I was kind of surprised by that because my in-laws are Fox News family, right? But when I told them I was going on your podcast a little while ago, when I mentioned that I was going to be interviewing you, they were like, "Oh, that's great. We like her, even though she's like a liberal." So I'm curious, like, what is the reception you get from Fox News viewers? Is it mostly positive, or do some of them have like a hate relationship with you?
both. I mean, also, what people will do to your face is very different than what they'll
Right.
say about you online. So I won't say I was the queen of the RNC, but I was very well attended. I wasn't Jesse Waters, waving like a beauty queen riding around in his golf cart, but a lot of people wanted to talk to me and to talk about the show, because whether they agree with me or not, or like me every day or not, I'm part of something that matters to them. And I imagine that that's kind of how your parents
Yeah.
feel about it. I also hear that there's an appreciation for the fact that I come prepared. Whether you think that I'm right or not, I'm not showing up and, you know, making it up as I go. I have been booed for sure. That's happened. And I think that's usually based on the denomination of red meat as to where you are. So I'm not completely surprised by that. But I think part of it is also just reflective of this knee-jerk cultural moment that we're in when it comes to politics, where it has become even less in fashion to work with the other side or to think nice things about the other side. I think quite to the detriment of the country and, how we can move forward. But everyone, conservatives love to hit AOC for everything, right? And that she's moronic and she doesn't accomplish anything. And who would ever want to spend time with her? And the answer is a ton of Republicans love AOC and love hanging out with her and love working with her, some of the most conservative ones. And the brave ones will talk about that actually when they're interviewed and asked these questions. And like, that's how it is supposed to be. But I think this environment that we're in, and I don't want to completely blame it on Donald Trump, because I think there are a lot of liberals who feel like even what I do is a mistake and that you shouldn't give kind of any credence to the other side, right? Like
Oh
go
yeah,
out
the whole
and
no platform, no,
yeah,
yeah, the whole progressive idea of that is kind of the antithesis of what you believe in.
100% the opposite. And I think to the point that you raised about who's actually watching Fox News. So Democratic viewership of the five is 20%, 30% identify as independents, 50% conservative. And that's the whole range, right? Like those are people decked in MAGA everything over to ones who have, a picture of Mitt Romney above their bed. So I don't know if those people actually exist, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about persuadable voters, when you're thinking about just in sheer numbers, like the five gets 3.5 million viewers a day. Right after inauguration, we were up to around 4 on a daily basis.
Wow.
Like, why wouldn't you do what I'm doing or try to do what I'm doing versus preaching to the choir, and getting
But they
on a
can be
cable news?
pure, Jessica. You don't
Yeah,
understand.
I know.
They can be pure.
Untainted by those dirty conversations and those dirty
They
dollars.
might never win anything, ever get anyone elected, achieve any policy, but they'll have a podcast and they'll be true leftists.
And I want you did all the good insults. I don't know what else to say. It's very frustrating to me, but I do think that there's a shift
Oh yeah.
undergoing right now, and certainly since the 2024
Well, I
election, when
like
people
it because and we'll get to this. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a liberal. But when I came up in politics, I'm 27 now. So even just 5 years ago, 6, 7 years
I can't
ago,
believe how young you were, like when we met, like when we
when
used to do Kennedy.
I would have been like 23.
Babe,
Yeah,
I was about to be like, I have
I
a
would have been
3-year-old, so it's
fresh
that
out of
plus
college.
20. But yes, fresh.
But so that was back when like the progressive mindset was no debate with fascists. Like
Yeah.
human rights aren't up for debate. All this kind of what I view as nonsense, kind of cop outs that just doesn't engage in the complexity of a democratic society. But I still see a lot of that, if I'm being honest. However, there's this rise of the democratic debate, bro, which
Yeah.
while I don't agree with them on that much, I do like to see the Midas touch guys.
Hmm.
Adam Mockler, who I really don't agree with on very much, but I like his style. I like that he goes
Yeah.
in to
Adam's
the
great.
lion's den. He debates people, and that's his whole shtick. Even, and I find them a little cringe, but like the TikTok debate bros, the Dean Withers and all this, I think they do a lot of low hanging fruit. It's sort of similar to when the Republicans go to the college campus and debate the unprepared non-binary girl rather than like a professor. But they're doing debate, they're doing argument, whereas not too long ago that would have been considered like platforming evil people or something. So I think
Yeah.
that's a positive development. But you were doing it before it was cool, so I'll give you some credit for that.